Hi, it's Nomfanelo. So, just before I start this episode, I do want to mention that while recording this episode, there were technical difficulties with the microphone that I was using to record as I was recording on my smartphone. And I do want to apologize in advance. It's still listenable, but the audio would go in and out. So, especially if you are listening to the audio version, I do want to apologize for that. I will get into details on the specifics for the after show episode, which will air after the season finale. So, I just want to apologize in advance, and I do hope that you enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So today I'm joined by a special guest. It is her first time on the podcast. She is also a fellow podcaster. She hosts movie reviews with Ceren. So please welcome Bennu.
Hi! Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, Bennu, for being here. It's a pleasure to having you here. So the film that we'll be discussing today is Gundala. So Gundala is a 2019 Indonesian superhero film that's based on the 1969 comic Gundala Putra Petir by Harya Suraminata, aka Hasmi. So the film is written directed by Joko Anwar, who's known for directing films such as The Forbidden Door and A Copy of My Mind. So the film stars Abimana Aryasata, Tara Basro, and Bront Palare. So here is the synopsis. Sankaka has lived on the streets since his parents left. Living a hard life, Sankaka survives by thinking about his own safety. When the condition of the city gets worse and injustice rages throughout the country, Sankaka must decide whether he continues to live to look after himself or rise to become the hero for the oppressed. So the film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival back in September 2019 as part of the Midnight Madness lineup. It was released in Indonesia on August 29th, 2019. It made over $1.7 million in video sales. In regards to critical reception, it has a 2.9 rating on Letterboxd. It won 3 Maya Awards, including Original Score. And at the time of this recording, it is streaming on Prime Video, Plex, and Hoopla, and is also available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, so we could get into first discoveries. So, Bennu, do you want to start?
At first I didn't really know about that movie. So when you told me about that movie, I was like, that's very interesting. And to my surprise, it was dubbed. But I was like a bit skeptical about that. I was like, if will I be able to like read subtitles or will it be dubbed? And to my surprise, it was dubbed into English. I could have watched it in German as well, but I chose English. So that's how I discovered the movie.
That's great. And what were your initial thoughts on the movie?
I was like very skeptical because I didn't know what I was like. I was like I was about to see, but then after like I watched the movie, I was like at one point I was like happy that I watched it, and the other one I was like, okay, this could have been better, this could have been better, this could have. Because I would start like dissecting it and you know talking eventually to my TV, being like, okay, like you guys could do this better, you guys could this scene better, and I don't know, I'm still like very torn. I guess I enjoyed the movie. We'll talk about why I enjoyed it, but also I was like, yes, it's really cool, like that it debuted at TIFF. Other than that, I'm like a bit meh. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
the lowlights are like up here and the highlights up are up here, so it's a bit difficult for me to like put into words what I really think about the movie. Besides, not just like shaming or like trashing it down or
Hmm.
destroying it.
So would you say you're more like in the middle with
Yeah.
this movie? Okay, pretty much. All right. So for me, so I actually attended the Toronto Film Festival back in 2019. It was my first time attending the festival as an industry member because I think I first attended TIFF back in 2007 as just a regular person at the time. So yeah, I heard about this movie at TIFF. I did not watch it at the time because my schedule was pretty hectic at the time, but I did like wanted to watch it after hearing about it at the festival. So as I was compiling the list of films to cover for this season, I decided, you know what, I'll decide to check out this movie. So I watched it for the first time on Prime Video, and honestly, I was disappointed with this movie. I do like appreciate like as an international movie, essentially like with the film's take on the genre. I find interesting in theory, but I just find how this film was put together. Honestly, it was disappointing. We'll get it. We'll break down like those thoughts as we have the discussion. But honestly, I just wish this movie was better than it ended up being at the end. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much my overall thoughts on this movie. So we can get into the highlights. Do you want to start, Benu? What you liked about this movie?
I think the highlight for me were the mixed martial arts like choreography, because as a mixed martial arts lover and doer, I was very pleased. But obviously, like, even that could have been like so much better, like a Mortal Kombat or a what's the word? What's the movie I'm thinking about? Mortal Kombat Beyond. Yeah, R. And so I was a bit like disappointed in that sense. But some of the camera um angles or like movement, should I say, were okay-ish. But yeah, for me it was the highlight of the MMA and the camera angles.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I do because I used to take martial arts myself, and I've watched a lot of martial arts movie throughout the years, and I do appreciate how like it was choreographed with this movie. I would say like one of my favorite fights was when Son Kaka was fighting the Benkor's orphans, as he calls it. That was towards the end of the movie. I thought that was nice also too when Wang helps Son Kaka fight the thugs that he fights in the alley. That was also a nice scene as well too. But I'm kind of right there with you in terms of how they decide to frame those scenes just from a cinematography perspective, which I'll get into that in the lowlights section. But other than that, like it's nice to actually see, for the most part, like the hits and all this stuff. Like it felt authentic, even though the angles did not properly service those moments, in my opinion. But it's always nice to appreciate fight choreography in movies.
I agree with you, but you know John Wick did it the best, so that's like
Mhm.
that's like a bit lower than John Wick.
I think John Wick, with those movies, works on that aspect is because the filmmakers are or were like stunt people and fight choreographers. So obviously those absolutely utilized those aspects well for those movies. So I don't really have a lot to add for this section myself for highlights, but I would say I do appreciate that the movie explores the tension between the people, mafia and the government, because clearly we see the people being oppressed. And I like how, in a way, with that aspect, kind of plays a crucial role than just being like window dressing, I suppose, or just being in the background. So yeah, that was fun to see. And I think like an example would be when the vendors have to deal like with the thugs, like when it came to them like threatening to destroy their property, and unfortunately it does get burned to the ground, which is unfortunate. But I do like, at least from a writing perspective, I would say those moments really helped in regards to the emotional core of the story. So was there another highlight for you, Benu?
No. Well, that villain, but we will talk about him. He was my spirit animal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah.
don't
And
know his name, but he was very entertaining.
And I would say a final note that I had is that as the protagonist, Kaka had a very tragic backstory, from the fact that his dad got killed during the protests, and then the mom disappears on him, and then essentially he's left to fend for himself. I really felt sad for him, especially when he was a kid and he really had no other options than to go to the streets to fend for himself. So that was quite heartbreaking to watch. But at some point, he was able to manage on his own by learning how to fight and all that stuff. So,
So he made lemonade out of those lemons that life gave him.
absolutely, absolutely. So, were there any final notes you want to add for this section?
That part was also a bit like sad. Um,
hmm
Other than that, no. It's a very like
Uh,
short highlight movie list.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get into the lowlights. So my main criticism with this movie is the fact that this is not a complete story, because clearly this was made to set up other installments for this movie, because apparently this is part of a like franchise, which I'll get into for the trivia section. But as a viewer, like I was just frustrated with the fact it was not a complete story. Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, apparently, he learns from Wulan that his mom is alive, and I honestly have so many questions on that. And then also too, towards the end, they tease like a new villain when Bangkok's thugs digged up this artifact using Son Kaka's blood. Honestly, that whole thing was weird. And also, too, they teased Suri Ash, who stopped the convoy that had the poisoned antidotes. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? Because I don't know, like, if they were heavily influenced by like the MCU or DC or any of those universes, but I just hate it, especially as the first entry for the universe. Honestly, that was just disappointing.
I cannot say more than you already did. There are clearly were copying, should I say, MCU with the potions, with basically everything, like everything.
Yeah. Now, like to be fair, I don't know like if this was what happened with the comics and all that stuff, but again, yeah, I did not get those choices with this movie. So also too, what I had as a low light, we need to talk about the villain Tenkor. Honestly, the fact that he wants to essentially poison the rice, and then which affects the pregnant women, but his goal was essentially to make the babies what complicit or to have no morality. For me it does not make sense, because it would have been better if he actually made poison that made everybody like under his spell, where essentially he could make them do whatever he wants so that he could control the city. I mean, that would have made more sense than this, honestly.
Oh, it's so like bizarre, but it's funny. Like it's so crazy to think about like all of the steps of his plans. But then when
Hmm.
you actually like break it down, you're like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah. I would say as a positive with Bancor, like he has like the elements of a villain in regards to his backstory, but just his actions as an adult for me did not make sense at all.
I think that's that like this is the thing about this movie which I don't like is like it never has a full circle moment. You know, like it never finishes a thought to execute that thought like well. That if did it make sense? Was this English? So it's like very frustrating to me because I love to see like okay you guys think you guys thought about this idea, why not like execute fully so it makes sense? Instead, you just open doors, open here, open something here, add something here, remove something here, and then you're left with this big mess of the
Yeah,
story, and
absolutely.
you end up having more questions after watching the movie before in comparison to beforehand because I was like okay like you did this but what happened to this person and or this person because I don't want to waste my energy.
Yeah, yeah, I feel it. I feel also too, it would have been better if Pankor had his own powers. Because I get that the people around him like have their own skill set, but as a villain, I felt like he should have had his own powers. Like maybe it would have been cool if, let's say, he was able to control fire, since fire was a big thing for him, especially as a kid and all that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you think of him as a villain? Did you thought he was threatening?
I was feeling the same way as I was feeling when I watched um, Ant-Man, the King Dine no Ant-Man and the Wasp, sorry, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Because like
Yeah.
they built up Kang it is like very threatening, like very like dark, very like bad guy, and then we met
Hmm.
Kang and he was just nothing. So I felt the same way with this person, even though I enjoy his antics. But
Hmm. Hmm.
it was the same feeling. I was like, yeah, like that's a waste of my time. Like, write something like cohesive. So I would be like, okay, it makes sense. I would be like, I would like, so I would be like jaw dropped. Like I would like be, okay, I get it now. But it's just like, meh. Okay, so next, like, it was very
Hmm.
disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. Also too, I feel like I don't know, because I get that here with the in terms of the government, they kind of want them to be portrayed in a positive light because we do see Ridwan, the politician, he wants Sankaka to essentially help them to protect the people and all that stuff. But I don't know, I just feel like maybe the government could have been more corrupt,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. Because like for example with Penguin TV series, I mean I've only seen the first episode, but clearly you see that the whole environment is filled with corruption, even though you'll have some decent people here and there. But here with this movie, I don't know. It just seems like the thugs are were just what fending for themselves and all this stuff. Honestly, I did not get that aspect at all with this movie, so it could have been fleshed out better.
I love the Penguin series. I'm a bit sad because it will end next. Actually, it will end this Sunday, but it's so good. Even better than I thought. I was a bit skeptical, like, Okay, like we have the penguin, and like what will be like sitting in this movie, and turns out it will be like it's kind of like the middle thing from Batman, the Batman, and the Batman Part Two. So yeah, DC
Hmm.
did it again.
Hmm. Absolutely. Also too, I wondered, so for the protesters, at the beginning, I felt they were not properly organized because it seemed like clearly they're upset. I'm assuming because of working conditions and all that stuff. That part was not unclear. So essentially, they decided to storm towards the factory, and they had, of course, to face off with the guards and all that stuff. So, and then after when that ended, two of the protesters decided to enter the factory, and then they all just decided to went home. For me, just that did not make sense. I just felt like they could have been a more united front where they were going to stand firm with their demands, whatever those demands were, and then they either able to achieve the goal or not. So again, that could have been fleshed out, but
Or just cut out.
yeah,
Maybe they
yeah,
had to like fill the like mark of like 1 hour or 2 hours. You know how how it's always with the movies. Like they have to fill a certain time to be shown or to be produced.
yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah. Hmm.
We can just only like speculate, but yeah, it was a bit like it was like I said, it was there are so many things where you think, okay, this is a great idea, and then it's not like executed well or poorly, should I say, and
Yeah.
and just frustrating. It's frustrating.
Hmm. Hmm. And also too, as we talked about earlier with the action scenes, I hated its use of the shaky cam, to be honest. It reminded me of if you've seen any of the films from the Jason Bourne franchise, I think
Hmm.
particularly with the second, with Supremacy and Ultimatum, the main complaints for those scenes was shaky cam. I do not get why did they use shaky cam. Now I get that some would use shaky cam to try to make those scenes look convincing, but for me, that was just not necessary. I don't know if it was stylistic choice because the filmmaker liked shaky cam. Whatever the case was, I hated that. I hated that choice. Hated
Shaky
it.
cams always give me motion sickness because like I'm like
Yes.
I don't like it either. Like if they had a bigger budget, they could have like done a what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, a POV version, like when you like see the action, or
Mhm.
like a wide angle camera, like when um in which movie was it?
Like how the John Wick franchise does
Yeah,
it,
in
essentially.
this one, or like in Fast and
Mhm.
Furious when they were doing when like John Cena and Letty, I think, or Mia, they were like on the bus and fighting with the bad guy. So that looked really cool, like from an angle. But this no, this just gave me motion sickness.
Yeah, yeah. And as a final note I had for this section is the CGI was very noticeable, the VFX, especially like with the lightning. It looked cheap, to be honest. So, now I
But
get that there's probably budget constraints, and there have been examples of movies with smaller budgets that can actually make great effects, like with the Everything Everywhere All at Once movie, for example, because it was noticeable for using, I believe, it was Adobe Premiere for the effects, but I don't know like if it was a budget thing or a creative choice. You never know with these stuff, but yeah, it. I was not convinced at all with how it looked
but
with the final
but
product.
like Prime Video also does this thing where they always mess up the contrast. When it's like dark, then it's too dark. When it's bright, then it's too bright. So Maybe that could also
Mm,
be the case.
maybe. Maybe.
Maybe I think it's most likely to uh, due to due to the budgeting.
Yeah, possibly. So, anything else you wanted to add for this section?
And this movie also reminded me of like Sin City a little bit, then Twisted Metal with Anton Anthony Mackie. Um, a lot of movies. I was like, okay, do you guys like copied this from this movie, this scene from that movie, or like Project Power? So yeah, there were a lot of movies in this movie besides the
Mm-hmm.
movie which we wanted to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we could get into the trivia section. So I just found this out before recording this episode. So Joko Anwar, who's the writer and director of the movie, he said that if the script writing process for this movie has been the hardest work of his career so far. Because apparently he would often spend 1 to 2 months working on the script, but with this case, he ended up working for almost 7 months with the script. And it says here, yeah, reinterpreting Gondela's origin from the original comic, he reworked the story in a way that could attract millennials and Gen Z, and has said that Hasmi's comics and notes about Gundala helped him to write the scripts. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this as a writer myself, but what did you think about this? Does this change your opinion about the movie at all, or no?
Maybe there is a universe where we'll see a better movie in those scripts, like the script he like tossed onto the waistband, waste paper pin. So
Yeah,
hope
yeah,
hopefully, but I know how hard it is to like write something because I've been writing a novel, but I like kept pushing it because I was like, okay, like I didn't like this, delete. I don't like this, delete. So it was supposed to come out this year, but I don't know when it will come out. But I understand in that aspect. Other than that, yeah, like it sounds like an excuse to be honest.
yeah. I'm right there with you because I'm a screenwriter myself. I know like how the process works and all this stuff. Because some cases it'll take you a short amount of time. Other cases not so much, depending on what you're trying to write and all that stuff. And yeah, because again, I probably would need to read the original comic to know like the ins and out for this property. But yeah, the fact he says he wanted to attract millennials and Gen Z, like I'm a millennial myself, and I do not find anything attractive at all with this movie. I don't know where he was coming from with that comic, to be honest, but yeah, I don't know what I don't have an answer for that, to be honest.
And I was like
Um,
thinking maybe he wanted to like make something original, like Penguin. To be honest, like it's. But then I was like, huh, it still sounds like an excuse to me.
yeah,
So
most like
and also I
most
just
likely.
hate everything to like having to be like, oh, suitable for Gen Z, suitable for millennials, suitable for Generation X, ooh, suitable for Generation Alpha. Like also like the Alpha generation thing is like they change. Like I thought I was a millennial. I now learned I found out via TikTok the other day that I'm actually Gen Z. So it's very
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Abimana Aryasata, who played Son Kaka, he had his own stuntman for this movie, but Joko Anwar states that apparently 97% of Son Kaka's stunts were done by the actor, and he preferred the use of the actor because it looked more natural than using a stunt performer. I find that interesting.
Yes, so he pulled the Tom Cruise on us, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
essentially. I don't know if the actor has a background with stunts or is just very good with those scenes, but for me as a viewer, it just looked very convincing.
cheap.
Now, obviously, like when he's like with full costume, it's hard to tell whether it's the actor or the stunt person. But when he was fighting without the costumes, I was convinced that it was the actor. So
But
that's my
like
thoughts on that.
him also like doing the 97% makes me think that okay, so he must have a very high insurance policy for this movie.
Hmm.
But also
Hmm.
maybe in post production he also like put the head or the body on from the actor onto the stuntman, so that has is also very costly. So I don't know what he did, but I find it always very interesting when like publications are saying, okay, this movie was made with this amount of stuntmen, or this movie was made with no stuntmen, which is very dangerous, but can be done. Um, so I'm always like very intrigued in seeing like okay, like what was the choice behind this? What it cost? Like, was it because of the budget, or was it because the actor insisted? So I'm always like very intrigued in that aspect.
So, also as a final trivia fact, so this movie is part of the Bumi Langit cinematic universe, which essentially focuses on Indonesia's classic superhero characters from the Bumi Langit comics, I believe. And so this movie is the first entry of the universe. And then the next entry was Suri Ash, which is a spin-off of the character that was featured in this movie during the convoy scene and in the post-credit scene also too. So that movie was released in 2022. And a sequel for Gundala titled Gundala, the Son of Lightning is in the works.
Yay!
So
Let's
that,
hope it's better. It's better than
yeah,
this one.
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. So, lastly, the important question: should this movie be rediscovered? What do you think, Benu?
Yes, because it's like it's one-time watchable movie because you will mostly forget about the things that happened in this movie, but also no, because it's like everything is so like bad. Like the story, the camera angles, the lightning. Um, watch like R&R instead, or any other movie instead. Like for the sake of cinema, please do, but for the sake of entertainment, no, stay away.
Yeah. So for me, I would like, here's what I'll say. So if you want to check out like an international superhero movie, like I would say, fine, go for it. Now, would I personally recommend this movie? Absolutely not. Because honestly, like the flaws are very notable with the flaws. Like the fact mainly that this is not a complete story for me, it just rubbed me off the wrong way with this movie, especially as the first entry of their universe and all that stuff. I would say watch it for the action scenes, but also to watch it with caution because of how they decide to frame those scenes. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this movie.
With the um, with like the subject matter of the movie, because it can be triggering for some.
Absolutely. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So, you want to tell them about your podcast and where people can find you online?
Yes, so my podcast is called Movie Reviews with Serene, and on that I do TV show reviews, movie reviews, US and Canada, well, mostly US, and some like European, German as well. Then I do like recaps of Netflix's To Doom, D23, the Disney Expo. I just released an episode today about the New York City Comic Con recap of day 1 and 2. Day 3 will be following very soon. I also do like some monthly watch lists. I bought true predictions. Most predictions, like 98% of the Oscars previous year and the previous year, before that year, like 2023, 2022, and 1, they came all true. So I have this kind of like super talent, I guess, super power of predictions and coming true. Then I also have guests. I had like actor and actress Janet Walmsley, who starred in Fargo with Ian McGregor. Then I also had fellow podcasters. I will have more guests this month or upcoming month or the month after that. So yeah, I basically do it all, and I release twice a week. That's Thursdays and Sundays, and that's it. I have a Instagram account where I show first looks and do trailer reactions. I did a trailer reaction for Creatures Commanders, and also for season 2 of Silo, season 1 of Dune Prophecy, and along with others. Then you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube. Yeah, that's it.
Alrighty, awesome. So you can find me on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. If you want to support the podcast, you could visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to donate. On the Spotify app, you could answer the featured poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, you could leave a review and rate the podcast. And you could submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, to be featured on the after show, which will air after the season finale. So all the links to our socials and all this stuff will be available in the description. So I want to say thank you, Bennu, for being a guest for the podcast. And I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode. And I hope to catch you on the next one.